What's going on, YouTube? Hey, so I wanted to do a really quick talk about the combat update. I didn't plan on doing this because so many more people have done it with much larger channels. People that are way more charismatic than I am have done it, and they did a great job. So I'm just going to have it playing in the background, and instead of just commenting on it like everybody else did, what happened is I was doing a Twitch stream talking about random things, and one of my followers came in and wanted Twitch chat and responded and told me what he thought. And it was the same thing he put on the post. Not quite, I don't know if it was all of it, but it was most of it. And he put it in chat, and I asked his permission to do this. So I brought it up. It's on my other screen. And I just want to talk through the points he made while this is running in the background, because they were really good points, really good conversation pieces, and I would love to know what you think in the YouTube comments. So he started with, I wrote this huge post on the forum, but I'll give you the too long didn't read, that it was an enormous difference between Alpha 1 and this reveal. Couldn't agree more. Alpha 1's combat was borderline terrible. I didn't play it. No, let's put that in there, right? Everybody I talked to, everybody that I listened to, and all the videos that I watched wasn't pleasing to the eyes. Everybody said it felt clunky and it just didn't feel good. So this new one felt just from visually, again, looks really good. I could feel a lot more of like the impact, and watching it was a lot more enjoyable. So I think everybody out there is pretty much on the same boat, that like, not that boat back there, but a boat. That this was just a mass improvement. And the idea of this wasn't necessarily to show off all the cool fucking bells and whistles. It was to show you the new direction. And I think as a community, the new direction is a good one, right? But he stated that there are still a lot of things that don't just feel right, understandably. So it is still just alpha. However, I think bringing up the ideas that he brought up, again, great conversation pieces and great things to address at this point in time. And he was saying that the light stagger. So he brought up stagger in general. So getting hit, hitting, blocking, like staggering, was non-existent in this demo. And you'll see it once Steven goes through his like 3-minute troll session where he like keeps acting like he's going to swing the sword and he never does. But you'll see it, right? His thought was like, maybe my little weapons like daggers don't necessarily stagger people, but this large sword that he's using should stagger somebody. And I 100% agree. If I get hit with a large weapon or a large force, I'm going to feel it. You're at least going to see me react a little bit. Now, perhaps that's not in there for a couple reasons. One, because it is so early in the development process, so we think, for combat. Two, maybe they just haven't done it yet, right? And that's what I mean by the first one. And maybe they just really haven't decided on how they want to do impact. But I would like there to be more of a reaction when I get hit, depending on the weight of the attack, and when I hit somebody, I'd like them to feel it. Like, see, like he didn't bounce back at all, and when I'm attacking, the animations look good. I love that. However, I'm just kind of going through the model, which I don't have a problem with, but there's like, the monster's not reacting to getting hit with a giant fucking sword. Even when he uses his ability, there's not really a reaction. And I would like there to be some sort of a reaction. Maybe that's a particular thing, but I think that would be neat. Obviously I don't want it to the extent where you could like lock your the mob or another player with your reactions of like, I hit you, so you stagger a little bit, and then I combo and blah, 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 and you're all staggered and you can't do anything. Right? Obviously not that, but I would like to see some reaction. And I like the idea that it made about, maybe the heavier the weapon, the more the reaction, the lighter the weapon, the less, or down to 0. And then he was talking about, he brought up that you could use audio to make everything more impactful. And I agree. And I think that, I'd said that maybe the lack of certain audio impact would probably just because of the development stage, and maybe they just haven't got there yet. But like, I'd like a little more sounds of like, I'm hitting a thing, so I'm hearing like a tinking and a whatever, like a bing, boom, boom, because I'm a professional beatboxer. All the sounds, and they could do so much more with audio to make it more impactful. Again, it's really early. It's still not even to Alpha 2 yet, which we may never get. I'm just joking. So I understand. But yeah, adding in audio and going in on the audio could make everything feel more impactful. 100% agree. So a point that he brought up that I never thought about is when he backpedals, there's no slowing down. And that doesn't really make sense. And from like a competitive PvP standpoint, which is where this viewer was coming from, is that, if you can just backpedal at full speed, it takes away some of the tactics, I guess, and it makes it feel not as good. So I could definitely see that I could definitely see how they could also do what they talked about here was when they did the sword, there was like using the sword, your movement kind of blended downwards. So they could, I think they could do that with the backpedaling. Like maybe your first couple steps, or maybe they do a distance is 100%, and then it blends down to like 75, and then blends down to a cap of like 50% movement speed, so that you can't just backpedal your ass off, right? You like your first initial like jumping out of the way is good, and then like the more you backpedal, the slower you get. That could be neat. Then he brings up skill animations being slower. Like I think we had a lot of discussion in the community about how he uses this really cool hammer skill. However, anybody paying attention whatsoever could just walk to the left or the right, or roll, or dodge, and get out of it. You know, speed of animations, I think, is just going to take a shitload of testing. You know, Alpha 2, you get in there with all these abilities, and people will be like, hey, this ability is really cool in PvE, but when it comes to PvP, like, unless they're just not paying attention, they're not gonna get hit by it. Then maybe they play with the animation speed. He brought up blocking. So the act of blocking, it looks like you take less damage. However, he was like, okay, but there's no reaction to blocking. You know, there's no stamina bar, there's no blocking points or blocking bar or anything like that. You just take less damage. Not only does it not feel like you are, because you don't like recoil or anything like that. He was like, why would I block and take less damage when I could just use one of these hundreds of dashes they have for and get out of the way? You know, one, I thought that the dashes were probably just because Steven was in quote-unquote God mode and had no cooldowns. Two, I think that, yeah, sure, the blocking could, from what we saw, could use some work. And I think that a cool way to do it would be to create a core blocking system, whether it be a stamina bar or whatever when it comes to blocking. However, I think you could address blocking by classes. I think you could put in, whether it's like passive abilities or abilities that just augment blocking in general, to various classes. Like whether it is like any of the tank archetypes where tank is your primary, get a different kind of blocking. Or maybe just various classes have different ways to block or are better at blocking. You know, my idea is that like if I'm a mage and I sit at range, or a ranger and I'm trying to shoot you with a bow, I don't block as much as if I am a warrior or a frontliner of some sort. You know, if I block with a shield opposed to blocking with a two-handed sword, you know, do I take 60% less damage when I have a shield and I block opposed to a two-handed sword where maybe I take 50? Maybe if I block with a light weapon, I take 40% damage. No. Flip that. No. I take 60% less, 50% less, 40% less. To where yeah, okay, that makes sense. Where it's determined on not only what I block with, but how frequently said class would block, and then you could adjust and address blocking almost on an individual basis from archetypes or weapons. Maybe that's a better way to go about it, and I think that would help create this archetype identity that I've been so heavy on lately. You know, if I'm playing a tank character and my blocking is just better because I'm a tank, and then different archetypes maybe adjust that a little bit flavor-wise, I feel like it would make playing a tank like feel like I'm playing a tank. You're like, oh, well, when I block with a shield, I take, like I said, 60% less damage. Well, I'm a tank. If I actively block with my shield, boom, I take 65% less. Or 60. You know, these numbers are all superfluous, but you get what I'm saying? Like, and maybe, okay, well, you have a stamina bar. Well, my stamina bar goes down by half when I block, or like half the amount when I block. And I have abilities that when I use them, my stamina bar shoots back up so I can block more. You know, or if I've blocked 3 attacks, now I can use this special ability only available to tanks. You know what I mean? So it makes the act of blocking more attractive than just getting the fuck out of the way. And then tactically speaking, blocks over dash, again, maybe I'm speaking out of my ass, but if I block, now I'm in range to use my melee abilities still. However, if I dodge out of the way, then I have to move back into melee range and use my melee abilities. So it depends on the class when it comes to blocking or how advantageous it is to block. You know, if you want your tankier frontline classes to block, perhaps adjusting the block on a class basis or an archetype basis, wanting them to be able to block, making it advantageous to block, to be in range to use their abilities, or to just take advantage of various class augments to the blocking ability. I think that could be a really cool way to address the blocking in general. Yeah. I thought that was a really good conversation point. He talked about blocking. We went over that. Oh, then he brought up, so when he swings, there's like a yellow animation behind his weapon. Now, I don't know if that is Weapon Master specific. However, when he uses the daggers here, it's like a wind shear, and I really like that, and it's clean. The yellow is still clean, but is every weapon attack going to have that yellow? This is what they brought up. Is everything going to have that color behind it? Do we really need the colors? I think they look neat. I really do. However, is that like one more thing to animate on 10v10, 50v50, whatever, 100 and 100? Is that just one more thing that I have to render? Or I might be using the wrong words. I'm not technically intelligent about these things. You know, this seems like easier to deal with. You know, could they just be that? Or is that just a Weapon Master specific color or effect? You know, could we just all kind of stay bare with these and then people could animate them depending on that? So there was the ability we said was kind of slow. Could we speed that up? So I see the animation deal. And then he also brought up, you know, if we cut out the animations and they all went to kind of the basic kind of wind shear effect that were on the daggers, could we increase the speed? Now, I was telling him, like, hey, the biggest complaint I saw in a lot of the media and a lot of the follow-up streams and the chat of various streamers was that it was too fast in general. I don't know about that. I like the speed it's at. You know, if it was slightly slower for heavier weapons and then increased to a cap with the daggers being quick, I like it. However, he was like, well, if you make it faster, it makes PvP more competitive, because now we're getting into people's ability to visually process, problem solve at a higher speed. You know, and I brought out, or I not really countered, because I can see where he's coming from, and it's a good point, is that if it was faster, it'd be more competitive and more difficult. To an extent, I agree. But I countered with, when you get fast enough, then you are making people's competitive viability, or their ability just in PvP to survive and win, based on one skill, in my opinion, again. And that's their ability, well, I guess it's multiple skills, but their ability to, like, visually take everything in at a high speed, process it quickly, and then react quickly, right? However, if we keep it the speed it's at, or bring it down by 5%, fuck, I don't know, then you get to add in more decision-making, more processing ability. More people are able to, then I think you're relying on not only that ability I mentioned before, but now you're on people's ability to make better decisions, to maybe take advantage of more complex systems that the classes might have or the archetypes might have. You might actually get to use like the full extent of like cool ass abilities or cool concepts, or what am I trying to say? Cool features of your class or your ability, or just of the combat in general, if you keep it at a reasonable pace to more people. Now, the people who would do great at 10 or 15% quicker, or what have you, are still going to do great, and maybe they're still able to take advantage of those. But the majority of people won't be able to. And I think in an MMO, the biggest thing is not everybody has to be great at PvP. Not everybody's going to be great at combat. They're just not. You would like everybody to be able to enjoy it and do it to an extent, you know. And I think the sentence that he followed up with was, you know, I want it to be easy to master. I want it to be easy to pick up and play and hard to master. Now that 100% agree. I think that keeping it where it's at speed-wise, or slowing it down a little bit, would allow you to take more advantage of, like I said, complex systems, decision-making, and things like that. If you speed it up, I think it only plays to people who can process at a high speed. Of course, there are pro players. There are just people who are naturally gifted at that. They're going to excel. And that's fine. You're always going to have somebody better at you at whatever, and that doesn't bother me. But I think the faster you make it, or, you know, things like that, you start alienating a larger portion of the player base. And while I already think this MMO is not going to appeal to the masses necessarily, because there's going to be a lot more complex systems and things can fail and succeed, and you know what I mean? Like, this is really heavily into a really specific vein that I don't know if a lot of newer MMO players will enjoy. I think the faster you make it, the more you alienate the crowds and the less people that are going to enjoy it. You still want a lot of people being at PvP, but those same people who would perform well at 15% faster will perform even better at this current speed and be able to take advantage of a lot of things. So I'm on the fence about, I feel like you could bring it down 5% maybe. Make sure your systems and your combat systems are fun and complex. Make them not only easy to play and pick up, but they need to be easy to enjoy. I think is something that we don't talk about enough. A system needs to be easy to play, obviously, for the masses, but I think it needs to be easy to enjoy. I need to easily be able to string together attacks and abilities and like have fun doing it. Right? Like, oh, well, it's easy. You just, in WoW, it's easy. You just push this, you do this ability, then this ability, then that ability, and then this ability, and then you go back. And you're like, okay. Boop, 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 boop. Hey, look, I killed the thing. Cool. You know, it's like, okay, yeah. And then if you're really good at it, you can do these 3 things, and your DPS goes by higher, and, you know, you manage these different resources better, and blah, 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 and you get a higher skill cap. Cool. But I want, like, one more step. Like, I didn't really enjoy it, even if I got okay at it, like better than average at a rotation. I mean, it was just like pushing my buttons and kind of chilling. You know, I wanted to be able to do that, but like in this more action combat style that they have, this hybrid combat. I want to be able to like, ooh, okay, yeah, that was fun. Oh, okay, like, I don't have to be good at it to enjoy it. You know what I mean? So I think that's something we don't talk about enough. I agree. I think that the speed of combat is a pretty pivotal point in the combat system. It needs to be easy to pick up. It needs to be easy to enjoy, but I would like it to be difficult to master because I want to feel a sense of accomplishment. If I beat somebody who I technically shouldn't beat simply because they have a surface level understanding of their archetype, and I've only been playing this archetype and I have a much deeper level of understanding, that sense of accomplishment would be great. Now, obviously, if somebody with my same understanding is on a kind of rock, paper, scissors, my nemesis of a class, and they beat the hell out of me, like, okay, yeah, I get it. I wasn't favored anyway, but I had a lot of fun. But still having the accomplishment of being able to master something and getting every last ounce of durability or last ounce of healing or DPS out of it would be really cool. And I would like that sense of accomplishment. So I thought that was a great point. And then he brought up a really cool idea is what it seems to us is that Steven and the team are avid lovers of MMOs. They want to craft an MMO world in the Land of Vera and Ashes of Creation that we love and we interact with on a regular basis. You know, it lives and it breathes, and we are supporting characters to the development of this world, our server, the nodes, the history, the lore. But what they are not, so we think, I don't know this for sure, but, you know, he brought up, they're not necessarily the people that are playing games for 8 to 14 hours a day, whether it be a content creator or a professional like PvP player, whether it be like WoW Arenas or Lost Ark PvP, or even like games like For Honor, which I don't even know if people still play, or things like that, right? So when it comes to PvP, which this viewer is mainly focused in on, right? What if they brought in quote-unquote pro players from various games to the studio to just play? And like, you know, they don't have to stream it. It can be under NDA, whatever. But bring them in and have them play and have them give honest feedback. Like if you give me 30 things that you... pieces of feedback, and 25 of them, 28 of them are negative, great. You know, like, where this is coming from is like Steven being so into role-playing and like D&D, and the team being into building this living and breathing world. They're not the professional PvP players. Excuse me. And not that that is their target audience. Maybe it is, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. However, PvP is a very large focus of this game, as it should be. In a world-building, society-building game, even in the world's history, human history, conflict is at the centerpiece of development. So they need to make sure that their conflict between players is the best it could be. So bringing in these professional players, things like that, to consult, to pick apart the game, to give advice as to what could feel better, what doesn't feel right, or, well, you know, look, I'm abusing this right now. You know what I mean? Like, look how I can abuse this. Things like that would be great. Not to mention the marketing that you could do with it. You know, I even suggested bringing in large content creators, doing your studio tour with the large content creators, whether it be Asmongold or Shroud or smaller yet impactful in the area Narc. You just fly them in, have them do a thing, and then just get them to play around and like give you honest feedback and be like, look, this part is NDA, but we want to chat with you guys, play for a couple hours, a couple days, play your asses off, give us live feedback and everything, and then we'll fly you back out. We'll give you some cool shit to give away to your streams, and then we'll let you stream everything before and after the play session, but not during the play session, right? And marketing wise, couldn't, you know, I mean, it would be totally worth it, and they could help you on just what feels good for an MMO? What doesn't feel good for an MMO? This is what, and they've just got, and while they're not, you could probably call them experts, because what's the number? 10,000 hours? Can we assume that over Asmongold, maybe even Shroud's career, they've played 10,000 plus hours of video games, particularly MMOs? You could bring them in as consultants, and then for the PvP specifically, go get those pro players from those various games. Bring them in, whether it's tab targeting PvP, whether it's action combat PvP, whether it's hybrid PvP. Bring them in, have them play the game. Have them, even if they give baseless, it doesn't feel good because your weapons suck. Okay, cool. Put that up there. And then when they go through it, they go, why do you think they suck? And you go through it and they're like, 99% of what they said stupid, but that one little nugget kind of ties in with that nugget, and if 6 people say something's wrong, let's go back and readdress it. Let's see what they're saying. It could really, really present a really cool way to do it. And no developer's really done that, to my knowledge. They have consultants they bring in oh, well, I worked on PvP on this game. Well, I worked on PvP in that. No. While we have our favorite systems for PvP, this game is trying to innovate. And building on older systems of PvP is where we start. But moving forward, we can't keep using the same people who developed the processes that we want to innovate on. Because most of the time, they're going to be stuck in that same idea. That's why you bring people from the outside. That's why consultants have jobs. You bring people in with separate viewpoints than your viewpoint, or are not in the same rut or the same valley that you have been in when it comes to PvP. And not that it's bad, but they come in with a brand new, fresh perspective, and they might only say one sentence that you didn't know, but that one sentence completely lights a brainstorm between everybody, and they're like, oh, we never really even considered that, because you usually wouldn't do that in PvP and an MMO, because it just would be a nightmare to balance, wouldn't it? Would it? And then the next thing you know, you've innovated. Will it work? Fuck, I don't know. Could it work? Hell yes, it could. Do I think it's a good idea? Yes. Am I going to continue to ask questions and answer them to myself? Yes, I am. But, it could be a really cool way to do it. I think from a marketing perspective, from an absolutely just development perspective, I think there's a lot of cool things you could incorporate into something like that. And I think it's a great idea. And I think all of these were great points brought up by this particular viewer. I asked his permission to kind of respond to his remarks onto a video. He made a post on there. I wish I would have asked what his forum name was so that you could go check it out. But I think it made a lot of good points. So let me know what you guys think about, let's go over it. What about staggering, or the impact of getting hit with or hitting something with a weapon? Yay or nay? Yes or no, do you want it? I do, to an extent. To what extent? Or perhaps what game you thought did it best? Let's talk about, I think, audio feedback and the weapon effects, things like that. I think those just aren't in the game yet because it's so early in development. However, backpedaling, does that bother you? It didn't until he brought it up, and now it does bother me a little bit. And do you think the blending downwards could work really well? Or maybe you have a different idea for it. Let me know what you think. Then we went over skill animations. Again, I think that's just because we're early, and I think that kind of stuff's going to take a lot of testing. So Alpha 2 being persistent and being people who are dedicated to the game because they've invested quite a bit, I think that they'll be the ones to test it on, and I think that'll get worked out. Blocking, I expounded on blocking, maybe using a new system, but the core system and then emphasizing it or developing it per class, per weapon could be a cool way to address it. What do you think? Let me know. Then we went over speed, I think is a big one. I think I've heard of most people talk about that. That'll probably be most of the YouTube comments are about, the various speeds of weapons and combat in general. So let me know what you think. I like to respond to all of my YouTube comments. And then what do you think about the consultant idea? Bringing in heavy content creators that are in the MMO space, and then focusing then on pro players to bring in for PvP in order to just bring them into the development process. You're kind of pulling in your community, you're pulling in everybody, and you're really nailing down on your development process, things that you might not have thought about, things that just weren't part of a development process, so you as developers haven't thought about it yet, but these non-developers, avid players of video games who dedicate 10 to 14 to 16 hours a day playing a game would be able to shed light on. So again, Thank you for watching this. This is totally different than our regularly scheduled program. I promise we'll get back to creating role-playing characters. I do. This was just presented itself as a great opportunity to talk about the combat stream, but not the same way that everybody else who's way better at it and way more popular than me could do. So I really want to know what you guys think. And then I think I'm supposed to plug here. Oh, yeah, because I never do this. Like and subscribe. And yeah. So thanks, guys. Have a good day.